Hey everybody, thanks so much for joining us for today's episode of The Outlet. It seems that we're having a little bit of a technical problem right now. One of our panelists is having a rough time getting back into the webinar. Something happened on our side or something like that. But that's okay because we can still definitely take you along on this fantastic webinar about how we can bridge the gap between education and employment. While I'm not the expert in the employment job field that Chaya is, I am very passionate about education, about getting people into jobs through SheTek. And Monica is so smart and great to listen to about education. I know that she has so much to share with us. So hopefully you don't mind bearing with us while I walk us through this interview with Monica today instead of Chaya. So again, thanks for coming with us for today's episode of The Outlet, Lunch and Learn with SheTek's Extraordinary Women. Today's episode is the 9th episode in our ongoing SheTek webinar series. At SheTek, we are so proud that we're able to create these webinars to help you all with the strategies and support in negotiation, leadership, risk-taking, and more. It's only through your contributions, questions, comments, and emails that we've been able to keep growing the outlet into the webinar that you love to plug into. Thank you so much to anyone who's been a part of our previous episodes of the outlet. I'm Meg Virag, Program Coordinator and Community Manager at SheTek, and I'll be your host today. We'll be recording today's webinar, and we'll post a link to the recording on the SheTek Power community as soon as it's available. I'll also send you an email to let you know once it's live. You can also follow us on our YouTube channel, SheTek Global, where all our videos are posted, including past episodes of The Outlet and the recent SheTek virtual conference. Right now, all our attendees are muted by default. We'll have time for a Q&A with Monica after our interview. You can submit all your questions in the Q&A at the bottom of your screen as they come to mind. We'll let you know that it's been received and get those questions answered at the end of the session today. Today's episode of The Outlet is brought to you by SheTek Inc., a nonprofit organization registered in New Jersey dedicated to increasing the number of women in the tech pipeline. Today's episode is titled Bridging the Gap Between Education and Employment. We're talking to Dean Monica Adya today, Dean at Rutgers School of Business in Camden. Dr. Monica Adya serves as Dean of the Rutgers School of Business, Camden, and she's a noted scholar in information systems, and her research interests include participation and experiences of girls and women in information technology careers. She also conducts research on design and the use of decision aids with an emphasis on forecasting systems. Dr. Adya is published in top journals in IS, Human Resources and Forecasting, including Information Systems Research, Human Resource Management, and Decision Support Systems. As Dean of RGSC, Dr. Adya brings a multidisciplinary perspective of business education. She has deep experience with developing hybrid, online, and interdisciplinary programs that have highly experiential and applied foundations. Dr. Adya has received international recognition for pedagogical innovations. She's been recognized for teaching innovations by the Decision Science Institute and has received honorable mention by the American Council of Education. She was also the recipient of Marquette University's Teaching Excellence Award. She consults with firms in areas such as IS disaster planning and recovery, technology strategy, IT workforce development, and innovation and creativity in the workplace. Our other guest has arrived. Hello, Chaya. We're so happy to see you today. Chaya Pamula is SheTek's co-founder and also the co-founder, CEO, and president of PamTen, one of our sponsors here on the outlet. PamTen is an award-winning global IT services and staffing organization, conceptualizing innovative software products and solutions for the...
Hey, Meg, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Meg, can you hear me?
Yes, I was just introducing you now. Chaya, through her work leading PamTen, Chaya saw for herself the challenges of hiring women in the tech field. Though jobs were available, Chaya didn't see many applications from women in tech. Chaya went on to found SheTek to increase that number of women in the tech staffing pipeline. We're so glad that you could join us on SheTek's The Outlet today, Dean Adya. I'm going to hand it over to Chaya now just so we can get our conversation started. Chaya, are you ready?
Yes, I am.
Great, thank you.
I think finally I managed to get in. I don't know why I was kicked out of the meeting. So good to see you all. And Monica, so great to have you with us. Meg, thanks for kicking off the meeting rather than keeping people waiting. So Monica, this is a very interesting topic that we're going to be addressing today, bridging the gap between academia and the job market. And I know you come from very strong computer background, computer systems background, and then you've been in teaching line for many years. And I saw that you published more than 20 publications, and you've received many awards. So you've got a great career journey. And it's going to be really interesting to hear from you and your perspective through your experience and knowledge about how we can help all these graduates coming out of schools and be prepared for the job market. So before we get started, I really want to start off with the my initial question about how you ended up in teaching line. And as a young adult, when you finished your school, how did you really get into the job market? What were your options? And how did you make yourself more visible in the competition to be able to do what you're doing? And we all have gone through those experiences. And I know situations are different now, but I really want to start off with your journey.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you, Chaya, and thanks for the introduction, Meg. I will say that I've listened to some of the outlet events, and it's been really amazing to learn the journeys of the many accomplished women that you have interviewed through this forum. So I am truly honored to be here. And really your work with PamTen, SheTek, and Softkin has been particularly inspiring. So to get to your question, it's my journey to education and to the IT field really began in India. I was born and raised in India, and I completed my undergraduate degree in it was a business degree. And at that time, I had a gap between starting my job and completion of my degree. And so my father, who had been to the US, said, there are two things you must learn. One is typing, which was funny at that time. This was quite some time ago. And then the second was learn computer technology. And so there was a newly formed institute in India at that time called the National Institute of Information Technology. And I signed up for just as a COBOL class at NIIT, and I enjoyed it quite a bit. Enjoyed the learning of a language and what it could do. And so as I was looking at, and as part of that, moved to the IT industry. At that time, computer technology in India was very new. And so I was involved in sales and and transitioned to customer service and training. So I kind of got a little bit of exposure to that, to the field there. So as I started thinking about graduate school, very naturally, the IT field had been moving more actively in the US. And so I started looking at degrees here and talking about women in technology. I'm the oldest of three siblings, and all three of us are women. And so there was a bit of a reluctance by my parents to send me to the US. Nobody in my generation in the family had traveled abroad to study. And so at that time, the only option I had was to go live with my mother's sister, who was in Omaha. And so what ended up happening was I signed up for a master's degree at Creighton University. And Creighton had just started a new degree called Master's in Computer Systems Management. So that became very attractive to me, and I signed up for that degree. I completed it. And along the way, you run into faculty who inspire you. So there was a particular faculty member who said, who was asking us to do presentations on emerging technologies in the field. And I picked robotics, which was an emerging technology area. And so I gave a little presentation in class, and he made a comment. He said, the way you present and the way you talk, you should think about a career in academia. And at the same time, I had another faculty member who invited me to do some research with him as part of one of his classes. And so I got on to a research project with him. And it really became interesting to hear from two different faculty saying you should think about an academic career because either you teach well or you have a knack for research, and that kind of that direction got me towards looking at PhD programs. And because I started getting involved in technology from the beginning, it just became natural that I did my PhD in MIS at that time, and I have been involved with the field since then. So a few things about my story. Some of the research that my some of my research has kind of shown there is a parent or a sibling who will often inspire women to consider technical careers. And so in that case, it was my father and my mother who was very inspiring in terms of you got to do higher education and get into that field. And then the second is the role of faculty in having women particularly think about what career paths they take. And so in my own story, there were both of those influences. And of course, from then on, I've really benefited greatly from mentorship along the way. So, that's how I got into academia and in the IT industry, is just through just exploring and starting with a small summer course and taking it all the way to a PhD and a career beyond. Chaya, I think you're muted.
Sorry, I'm managing through the phone. So I started my career as a faculty teaching computer programming in, I think, Pascal, BASIC, Fortran, COBOL, those days, right? So
Interesting.
Kind of reveals my age. But but I think teaching is something that is always, that helps you to be more strong in the subject that because you have to teach somebody, you tend to learn thoroughly, right? You gather all that knowledge and experience. So it's really interesting. One thing we really want to focus today is about the gap that is there between the academia and the job market, right? So when in my company, we bring in interns from universities. In fact, with Rutgers, we have this externship program that we've been partnering for the last 4 or 5 years. One thing we notice is, they're very enthusiastic to learn, which is really good, and they have some knowledge of skills in the specific subject area. But what I tend to see is there is this whole job preparedness about how do you. I think these externships really help them to understand how the job market is and be there in the real situation. But some things like presentation skills and being able to express very clearly. And then also having that level of focus on something, not just delivering something very quickly, but looking at the details and being more detail oriented and deliver things. I see there is gap in certain things like that. And we also know that the New Jersey government has introduced many grants for the employers as well as the students, right? So apprentices that you can apply for those grants to upskill, and even for employers, they're offering some incentives to hire these, fresh graduates. But many companies don't even know that those grants exist. That is also another challenge. But as with SheTek, our focus is really to bridge the gap and fill that pipeline. So my question is really, how are the universities preparing the students to get into the job market more successfully? I know there are campus recruiting and all those processes happen, but not everybody gets through the campus hiring, right? So how are the universities preparing these students?
Yeah. So I think this is an interesting challenge that we continue to face in academia. and I think academia yeah, as well into the industry. So if you look at the role of academic institutions, it is really to develop the citizens of tomorrow, both as professionals in the workplace and also as leaders in the community. So when you look at that aspect of an academic institution, it's very natural that there should be a strong alignment between industry and academia, because that's how we will prepare the professionals of tomorrow. I think where some of the misalignment occurs is where certain specific technical skills, for example, are being looked for in our students, and but also what we are hearing from the industry more so is exactly what you highlighted today, which is presentation skills, communication skills, as well as just being able to take a project from beginning to an end. And I think when you look at the cycle of a student when they come to you as employees, college, whether, and I'll use the word college very broadly because there are 2-year colleges and 4-year colleges as well. That our role then becomes bridging that gap between the skills that they bring from the high schools to how they become ready for the workforce. And over the years, we have tended to focus a lot more on I use the word technical skills broadly, whether you're pursuing an accountancy degree or you're trying to specialize in finance or IT. I call those broadly technical skills in the sense that they're specific and unique to your discipline. So I think we've developed our curriculum around delivering those skills, getting them ready for the entry level skill sets. But I think as we've done that, we've assumed that the presentation skills exist and the communication skills exist. So there's a couple of things that we are now as a business school trying to focus on, and I think a lot of business schools are doing that, is how do we start developing these skills from freshman year? Because they are good accountants, they are good, financial analysts, they are good technical people in that domain. But then we have employers like you who come back and say, well, the presentation skills are not that strong. So a lot of universities have started programs in freshman year, and I can give you a specific example from Rutgers Camden. So we have a class called Professional Skills Forum, and another class that our students take as their juniors and seniors is career development. So each year in the 4 years that they are with us, we start introducing communication skills, starting with even how do you draft a professional email, to how do you develop a good, strong presentation. And these classes are dedicated to developing those skills. How do you write a good resume? How do you get on LinkedIn in year 1 and continue to build your profile in that space? And then what we are trying to do is link our other curriculum, our accounting classes, our marketing classes, our finance classes, very directly to what we teach them in these professional classes, by saying, okay, here's how we teach them how to do a presentation. In your marketing class, you should be able to take the skills that we taught you around presentations and be able to apply them. And so very deliberately, schools have been trying to develop what you and I will refer to as soft skills for them to be successful in the workplace. Are we 100% successful? I would say no. There are students who pick up very quickly and develop that skill set, but then we are also dealing with students who are first generation students who don't have the benefit of having parents who've been in the professional space themselves. And so, your and my children, for example, have parents who are in the professional space, teach them about networking, teach them, can look at their resumes. A lot of our students don't come from that background. And so it takes a little bit of an extra effort, which is where the combination of what we do with our professional development classes and what they learn in the internships and externships really becomes very important. And that's a link that we are trying to strengthen even more. So when our students, for example, go and do an internship, let's say at your organization, they have to come back and reflect on their experiences and what they could do better. But I think where that relationship could be even strengthened is if I picked up the phone and say, Chaya, how is this particular student doing? And here's what we do in our university. Can you reinforce that as part of the internship? I think that linkage needs to develop a little bit more for our students to be better prepared. Chaya, again, if you can unmute.
Sorry. I also know that many universities have partnerships with the corporates, right? So
yes,
the corporates can provide some projects or pilot projects for the students to work on so they can get some real hands-on experience.
Mm-hmm.
So do you have any information that you can share how that program works and how that is helping the students, or is this effective enough, or there should be a lot more engagement with the corporates?
Yeah. So there's, corporate engagement. I think a lot of business schools and a lot of universities have developed career services units, both within at the university or campus level as well as at the school level. Can we do better at developing and building those relationships? I think yes. The challenge always has been that bandwidth at both the corporate levels as well as the university levels is limited. So I'll take the example of campus recruiting. When we look at campus recruiters from corporations, they are very streamlined team. That is, they're short staffed. Sometimes they don't have the right number of people in place to do extensive corporate recruiting. At the same time, universities are tightly staffed as well. And so what I've seen where there's some successful corporate engagements have come is when you start building practices that recognize that we both are short-staffed, that we both have limited resources. So it's even more important for us to develop efficiencies that might help the joint collaboration better. So for example, next semester at Rutgers Camden, we are going to start with, at the School of Business, we're going to start a lunch and learn with our employers. And so what we would do is instead of saying, hey, you know what, here's the students, here's their resumes, here are the jobs, and our role is to match the two, we're saying, no, come on into our building, come on into our virtual space and sit down with us and have the sort of conversations that you and I are having. What are our students good at that we want to continue to improve on? What is it that we need to do better? And is it the softer skills? Is it the hard skills that we need to get better? And the third piece is, where can we build partnerships so that you are in our space a little bit more, trying to help and shape our students a lot more effectively for the workplace. And some universities are very good at that. They have those practices in place, those relationships are built to a point where it's a very good synergy. And there are others that are early in those stages in trying to build those relationships from there. So I think the mistake that corporations and universities can make is serve only as a match between students and jobs that are out there. That relationship has to be taken beyond a matchmaking and go into truly developing our students from freshman year to the time they graduate. And also engaging with our faculty. And so we can talk about that a little bit further down. But I'd be curious, what do you see as, since you are recruiting students for internships as well as full time, from your perspective, what are some improvements that can be made in these relationships?
Yeah, so that's actually a good question. I mean, we as a company, we are very committed to bring in help and create jobs within our company. So we have done many times. We have taken interns, externs, and we trained them. And I personally am very committed to mentoring at least 2 to 3 women every year. I'm engaged with different organizations that provide mentorship opportunities. But I think across the corporates, right? Even we struggle with our SheTek initiative. That it's like a chicken and egg story, right? Companies want to hire interns, and at the same time they want the students who are a lot more proficient in what they do, and also majority of the companies are looking at some experience. So what happens is, unless until you give an opportunity, the students won't have an experience. So right, so then this whole apprenticeship programs, everything came into picture. And even that, there are very few organizations who are really encouraging that kind of level of commitment they have to encourage these apprenticeship programs. So I think it is still a struggle. But as a company, we are able to bring in some students and being able to give them that level of exposure and training. But we are not as big as a Fortune 500 company, right? We only have limited opportunities there. What we are trying to do through SheTek is to really create those partnerships, engage, create partnerships with the universities and partnerships with corporates, engage into a conversation, collaborate with them, understand where the gaps are, and bridge those gaps to fill that pipeline, right? Job pipeline. So we are one of the reasons why we are also talking to you and having these partnerships with the universities is to understand where exactly are the gaps. How do we partner with the universities to enhance the skill sets of these students so they can be very well accepted into the job market. So I know that there are incubation centers in some organizations, some universities. The companies are opening up and giving the hands-on training to these students. So there is some sort of solution there. But as I mentioned earlier, there are few other soft skills that need to be focused on. I feel personally, I came across experience where students are given a task, there is a level of accountability and commitment that need to come from them, right? And then also a thoroughness. They need to be able to thoroughly address the problem. And also skills like being able to analyze situations, being able to understand the problem and then come up with different options, rather than, it's easy to drop the ball, right? So the level of that kind of training is something that, one, comes through the job experience, and two, has to be some soft skill training in addition to the skill sets. I think that's my experience. That has been my experience. And I always tell, the youngsters that you got to have that kind of mindset to focus on something and then, aim at it and have that commitment to achieve that goal, and then don't drop the ball midway.
Yeah. And I think that's where some of the programs have really kind of narrowed down. It's I'll give you an interesting example. So at our School of Business, I mentioned we have a good number of first generation students. And one of the things we noticed, we were organizing these networking events for these students, and it would be over a meal, or it would be over a wine and cheese, or something of that sort. And we realized that the students' dining skills, for example, were not as strong. And so that we integrated that as part of their professional development. When you're networking, when you're out in a professional world, you should be able to sit with a client team and be able to have good etiquettes and dining skills and conversations. So we introduced a evening where they have a networking event, and as part of that networking event, we teach them dining skills and etiquettes and so on and so forth. It seems like a simple thing, But when you realize that our students haven't had that exposure, or some students haven't had that exposure, it's important. And similarly, I gave the example of professional email writing. And so our students are texting. I mean, our kids are texting all the time. The way they text is how many times they will write their emails. Hey, how are you? Or, hey, can you do this for me? And so part of us, our job is to kind of step back and say, okay, you don't refer to your manager as hey, and you have some etiquettes around drafting, because that email could be written to a client, and you want to be able to do it the right way. And so as we are seeing that there are these needs in this in the soft skills place, how do you start a project and you complete it? When you are committing to meet with an individual and have a meeting set up with them, you make sure you show up for that. And then through that, they grow into what we call the career development side, which is how do you take a problem? How do you make sure that you're communicating with your manager to ensure that you've understood what the requirements are? And then how do you deliver and validate? Because a lot of our kids will, or this generation, I would say the next year, they'll take something, they feel they can run it, and then they come back with an end product, which may not at all look like what they need. So we've integrated those sort of practices in place, design thinking from the other's perspective when you are developing and delivering putting together a deliverable. Those are all things that we have to try and infuse through both our curricular as well as non-curricular engagement. And like you're mentioning, not every company is a Fortune 500, not every university is an Ivy League. And as you might know, higher education institutions are facing tight budget cuts, especially during the pandemic. And so we're trying to be creative around how do we use our efficiencies and develop efficiencies so that we are working better with corporations. So it's a work in progress, I think, that needs to go forward.
Yeah, it is. And especially in the current COVID situation, I know there are there are positive side and negative side of COVID, right? The students are restricted to the four walls, and they have to stay home and go through the classes. They're missing their friends. But one thing with that is also that COVID has really challenged many educational institutions to have the type of technology needed to continue with these virtual classes, and which also is allowing a global reach, right? So there, I mean, it opened up minds for many different ideas, right? How we can improve the way we can bring a lot more valuable education and training to the students. So what is that you're currently doing? What are the new ideas or plans you have, considering the current situation at your university? What are the new things that you are now thinking of doing?
Yeah. So it was interesting for our School of Business. The shift to online was relatively painless because we do have both at the undergraduate as well as at the graduate level, we do have degrees that we have been teaching for about 5 to 8 years. I think one of the opportunities that COVID has opened up for us is we're trying to enhance at the undergraduate level our students' exposure to different opportunities. We're trying to open them up to speaker events. We just executed a full week of entrepreneurship activities. We had speakers, we had panels on fundraising. Now, these were, the challenge with some of these events where they were, students maybe living off campus and may not want to make a trip to the campus in the evenings. And so we kind of saw a range of low to mid-level participation from the students. But what surprised us is that with COVID, because we have to move everything to virtual, our student organizations have become very active. And our staff and faculty have become very active in the virtual space, where we are organizing a variety of networking events. We're finding that our alumni are more willing to participate in it because they don't have to travel an hour to get to campus. And we're able to try a few things that we couldn't have executed before. So here's an example. Where one of the challenges, fun activities we're doing with our undergraduate students is to have them develop a little video about what they like at Rutgers Camden and at the School of Business. And as we've typically, for the winning teams, we've given them a T-shirt or like a pen or a hat. I mean, it's swag that they get. But this time we said, we'll give them 15 minutes with a high-profile alumni, and that is the prize. And so the top two teams that will win the award will get to spend 15 to 20 minutes in a virtual discussion with one of our alumni, two of our alumni who are, high enough in a corporate ladder that the students could benefit greatly from that interaction. We had very quickly our alumni agreed for that. And our students, they've kind of upped the game in terms of how they are reacting to that competition because of the prize. So these are things we could not have done before. Just to ask somebody to give 15 minutes of their time to be physically there. I mean, we could have done it through technology, but it's making us think differently in the circumstances. We had planned the entrepreneurship week about a year ago. And the challenge for us was, do we continue with it because it's a week-long set of activities, or do we delay it to the next year? And we were like, no, let's continue with this year. And we had over 50 students sign up for the activities, which for us was very encouraging because, attendance has been a challenge. So I think we're beginning to explore different ways of using this virtual space to make opportunities available to our students. And I think going forward past the pandemic, we keep saying we will have some in-person activities, but we want to complement it with virtual activities. So students, a variety of students, those who have a range of commitments could benefit. We're rethinking our programs in how we deliver them. How can we teach in person when we are able to, but also simultaneously reach an audience which wants to be remote? So program delivery is being reconsidered as well. And this is a good time for us. I mean, we're all in a stage where we have to wait the pandemic out. But it's a time for us to think beyond the pandemic and say, how are we going to be different? What's going to be our unique strength, both at the student level?
So in the interest of time, Monica, I
Yes.
idea, whatever program you talked about, the students having to, they're going to get some time from the alumni. So that's a wonderful idea. I do want to ask one question about what is your advice to the students who are opting for some job opportunities? What would be your advice? What do you want them to do? And how do they find opportunities, and how do they prepare themselves?
Sure, absolutely. So let's maybe start with a few things. As while they are still students, I think there are two pieces of advice that I will give them that make sure you leverage as many opportunities as possible that are made available to you by the campus and the school. Shadow visits, setting up informational introductory meetings, internships, speaker events, competitions. I think those open up your mind, the student's mind, to opportunities that they may not have thought about before. So that's one thing that I would say is absolutely leverage as much of opportunities as possible. And then the second is network, network, network. These two are linked. You attend a speaker event, you can connect with that speaker. That gives you an opportunity to expand your network. And so thinking about those two things is really important. As they get closer to applying for internships or full-time positions, I think it's really important for them to think about how they present themselves. So starting with the resume, I've seen so many resumes that are not professionally developed. There's spelling mistakes on it, there's incorrect information on it. Your resume is the first thing that is going to speak about you. And if that's not better, well formulated, that's it's sloppy, it's got mistakes, it's got information that is not relevant, that is going to be a kind of first door that will shut on you. So take the time to build a strong, good resume, which is professionally developed and highlights your strengths. The second is, we ask our students to be on LinkedIn freshman year. You have 4 years to build a social media presence. When recruiters look at you, they will look at not just your LinkedIn profile, they will look at Facebook and Instagram, and I think it's how you present yourself and brand yourself in your social media becomes really important. And something you'll hear from career services: develop your elevator pitch. So if you're meeting Chaya for 30 seconds or a minute, what do you say about yourself that piques Chaya's interest in wanting to have a further conversation with you? Because these literally elevator pitches can open up windows for you. Mentoring is very important, and there is never, my advice is don't stick to one mentor. Research shows that having multiple mentors is always a better idea, but think about how you develop your mentor panel, if I can use that word.
So yes, completely
Yeah,
agree.
there you go. So there will be some mentors that are great from a professional development standpoint, some that will develop you on a personal side. Each mentor will bring something different. So develop that that mode of looking for and identifying people you're comfortable with who can be mentors for you. And then as you transition to the workplace, I think our students need to be ready for that transition from college to work. It's a much more structured environment. You can't be out partying at 3 o'clock in the morning and then show up for work at 8 in the morning, cogent and be ready to deliver. So I know it's a tough transition, but being ready for that world of work that is a lot more structured, that change has to happen. Looking at your job wisely, understanding the culture and what the organization presents to you is important as well. And I think also keeping in mind that just as you're looking for a company that will provide a cultural and a work environment that aligns with how you want it to be, the same way you have to be ready to align your career path with the goals and preferences of the organization. And so it has to be a two-way match from that standpoint. And I think very, very important to manage up. That is, communicate with your manager, respectfully communicate with them, deliver on your deadlines, and partner with your manager to prioritize what the work is. I mean, this is something I'm having a conversation with my own kids. Is you've got your week planned out. Something else pops up along the way. Have a conversation with your manager to say, I've got these things. What do I move to the next week? That's helping you prioritize a little bit.
That's really a good point, Monica, because I've experienced that it's important that people take proactive approach, right? Yeah. So even my teams, I always encourage, be proactive, and I've done that in my own career. If my manager is busy, at least proactively, I would give the update on what's happening, and then at least go back and say, hey, I have some time, I can help you. Do you have anything else you want me to help you with? And also being able to understand the situation and analyze and be able to give options, right? Rather than just waiting for instructions. It
Yes.
was never the case in my entire career, never waited for instructions. And I always
Yeah.
tell people, don't wait for instructions, right?
Yes.
So it's a great point. I mean, it's important that they understand the proactive approach they need to have and
Yeah.
have collaborative partnership.
Absolutely. And the one thing I tell my team, I think this is something you might have something to say about as well, is what I don't want is for them to think about the problem and come to me expecting me to solve the problem. I will do it with you, but what I want is if you're thought of a problem, think through the solutions as well. And then come to me with a few solutions in mind that then I can work with you to identify a path forward. Because then you change from being a complainer where you only
Yeah,
identify a problem to being a problem solver. And
yeah,
I think most organizations, I mean, all organizations are looking for a problem solving mentality as opposed to a problem identifying mentality. So I think that through life and through careers is a really important
yeah. I
aspect.
think we could speak longer. I mean, there is so much that I would love to discuss
Um,
about. I think we're up with the time. I
yeah.
have Meg back on the camera. It's a wonderful conversation. I want to see if we have any questions, Meg.
Yes, we do have one question from one of our audience members. They recently made the transition from education to employment, so they really had a burning question here. They asked, do you have any suggestions for early career folks looking for a first job? I graduated last summer, but every job wants experience, and I cannot financially afford an unpaid internship or volunteer right now.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think there are now regulations around unpaid internships as well, so we want to keep in mind. So I would would like to learn a little bit more about the background of this individual. But if the transition is happening from an academic institute, academic environment to an industry environment, I think the advice I would give is try to develop, lacking experience, try to develop a set of skills that would be beneficial to the sort of industry or the area that you're trying to get into. And I will say there are many ways of doing this. I mean, you can get there's platforms like Coursera and EduCause that provide you learning opportunities at low cost as well as at no cost sometimes, all the way to short executive workforce development opportunities that are not as expensive. I know at this time, folks are not wanting to spend or want to be a little bit more conservative, but identifying certain skill sets that would look good on your resume that then become a little bit substitutive for the lack of experience then becomes really important. So a couple of examples that I can give you: project management. There are many platforms where you can get project management training, and that can get you towards a certification eventually. Lean Six Sigma is another one of those areas where there is a great demand. But not enough people who may have walked through these training sessions. And so what that will do is bring certain skill sets to you that may have developed in the workplace, but now you're being proactive about it and building those skill sets, so it becomes a little bit substitutive as opposed to a to direct experience. And then the other thing I keep saying is leverage whatever opportunities there are to connect with people, to meet up with individuals. And I think in a virtual setting, people are much more willing to give time. Very briefly, again, I think this would have been a interesting, deeper conversation that would help me identify. But those are two things that I could suggest right away.
I agree. I completely. It's important that they do their homework, right? And also look at the demand in the market, do some homework, identify where there are opportunities. And one thing I say, I know there are laws around, the paid internships and everything. But again, at the same time, if we are waiting on finding an opportunity, the way I see it is it's taking me, let's say, 3 months to find an opportunity. Instead of just sitting 3 months and waiting for a paid opportunity, I would actually find ways I can gain some experience.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
advice would be to find those connections where you can at least get some experience so you can get that project experience onto your resume. It's
Absolutely.
like, I'm waiting for a job to come 3 months, 4 months, but I could have gained some experience I can pop into my resume. So that's something I have done in my life.
Yeah.
It's difficult to get paid jobs immediately. At the same time, the jobs require you to gain some experience. So I think instead of waiting for an opportunity, I would really jump into something that I can really take advantage of
Yeah.
and add that experience in my resume. And that's going to be definitely having some value other than just having some academic qualification and not having hands-on experience.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think that is a great point. There is the legal side of unpaid internships, but I think there are also, and I believe this individual was concerned about not having the bandwidth to do anything something for free. But I think you think about nonprofits as an organize, as a possibility. If you're able to, as part of your time, work with a nonprofit organization and lead a project in that space, and at the same time build a skill set, your training in project management side. Now you have a story to tell. I learned project management. I had a chance to apply it to a nonprofit organization. I led this project. It shows leadership. So it's going to take, some kind of synergistic opportunities to be leveraged that would allow for that. I do
Yeah.
agree. I think there's a great suggestion. Facebook groups are a great chance to connect with individuals. I would also say LinkedIn has some great opportunities to think about as well in terms of groups. Look at affiliation, affinity groups that allow you to maybe join at a lower cost or no cost. There are a lot of women in technology groups that would be great to join. Those will allow you to increase your network, and you never know where an opportunity might
Yep.
arise. So.
Very true.
We have a quick follow-up question from one of our audience members, Lynn. She asked if your same advice would apply for seasoned professionals who have been out of the IT industry for a while and may now be looking to return.
Yeah, that's a tricky one, especially I think particularly for women who may have stepped out, because the challenge with IT industries are technology moves so quickly that you could be out of the industry and be completely, you come back into it a few years later and it looks very different. So my suggestion in that case is, start with maybe some soft aspects, if I can say, of technology careers. So, for example, if you've been in the IT industry before, you probably have some project experience. Service side of technology, ITIL certifications may be easier to come by than maybe some of the more technical skills. But what I will reinforce is I think many of you us need to be thinking about what I refer to and what is being referred to as lifelong learning. And that lifelong learning can come from many places. They can come from technical credentials that you may get out of an executive education unit. It can come from workforce development opportunities. You could be taking a business analytics course through Coursera that is offered by, Harvard Business School, for example. So I think finding those opportunities is going to be important. I will say that it is not difficult to get back into the IT industry today if you left it a few years ago. because what has happened is with the outsourcing that is happening in some of the tech space, the demand for analysts, business analysts, and systems analysts, project managers has gone up. And those tend to be what I would say, as opposed to enterprise infrastructure or cybersecurity, tend to be softer areas to transition into. And then you can start building your profile as you want to going in the future. And I agree. I noticed some comments about having young children. That's kind of the opportunity in IT is it's providing a lot more flexibility to women in the workplace, especially now as we move into telecommuting options. And so if you can identify a path, that's the beauty of the IT industry. Is you can be on the management side of IT, if I can broadly use that term, all the way to a very technical side of IT. Most of us kind of sit somewhere in the middle. And I think identifying what training opportunities exist in that range or that spectrum that we that I refer to is going to be important because of the fact that there are so many opportunities for lifelong learning that are now available through the various modalities.
Yeah, Monica, all great points. I know we are up with the time, but I just want to add a couple of things. It's the good news, as you said, it's IT industry, it's ever changing.
Yeah.
So, which means even if you left 10 years ago, you come back, there is always a new skill that you can learn. And especially think of cybersecurity space, right? There are some cybersecurity analysts and their positions in the AI ML space for data curators, information curators, and also the business analyst, as you said. These are all the roles that do not require you to be a programmer or a developer, right? Even for a programmer, there are new things that are coming in now, the tools and technologies. They don't need to go back to what they learned 10 years ago. It's really understanding what is there in demand and what interests you and get into that line. And then there are so many online courses, as you said, they're available, right? Udacity, Udemy, and Coursera, and LinkedIn has a lot. Really finding time to, and that's one of the beauties of the technology industry, because even now I have to learn. I learn so many things every day, and you have to keep updating your skills. And without that, it's hard to survive in the technology industry. So even if someone in the industry, they still have to learn. So if you have left 10 years ago, you have to come back and learn what's happening in the new world.
Absolutely.
And the other thing is the virtual networking. There are so many meetings, webinars, networking happening. Take advantage of that, and that's what is going to open opportunities for you. So I think there is tremendous amount of resources available. It's really about identifying what interests you and doing your homework in that space, finding those people, connecting with them, getting some advice, and learning and trying to get back into the industry.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think you rightly said, even if I had stayed in the IT or an individual had stayed in the IT industry, we would be reskilling all the time. And so if you've left the industry and are now coming back, that reskilling is going to be important. It's a question of what aspect of IT you want to focus on and what the source of that reskilling might be. So.
And taking that as an opportunity, I do want to say that through SheTek, we are planning some programs that are coming up next year. So Meg will continue to engage everybody in the community, tell them what's coming up. But that's really our focus. How do we help? Especially COVID really made the situation worse. And, there are the new jobs, percentage of new jobs opening up has declined, and percentage of unemployment has increased, right? So how do we really bridge that and help people to get back and pivot their career and do something different and find opportunities? So we're looking at programs that would help to bridge that gap. So hopefully next year we'll have more.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, ladies, so much for such a good session that we had today. I know that our audience really enjoyed hearing a lot about it. I know I really enjoyed hearing about it. Before we go, I'd like to invite everyone that's watching to come and join us over in the SheTek Power community. You'll find us over at shetek.net. Our mission is again to increase the number of women in the tech staffing pipeline. We do that through engaging, empowering, and employing women just like you. Engage with us in our community's active discussion board. We regularly post new topics to discuss things that are relevant in your career, or relevant to you in your career. You can connect with the top women in tech around the country, like Monica and Chaya here, learn from them, and then share your learnings with others. The SheTek community even has a revolutionary matchmaking system based on the interests and skills in your profile, making it a great place to find a mentor. We actually have a follow-up conversation going on in the community right now, so you can ask more questions about transitioning from education to employment. Tell us all about it. We really want to know. We'll feature the top comment in the next episode of The Outlet. You can also empower yourself with the SheTek community's resources. We offer trainings in top tech skills like Tableau, Salesforce, DevOps, some of the things that you might have heard today to increase your skills, bulk up your resume, and stand out in a crowded job market. Catch our on-demand trainings on the SheTek YouTube channel. Use our free downloadable worksheets to set effective goals and develop self-branding strategies. We even have tips for virtual interviews, which is great for this new virtual world that we've found ourselves in. You can get employed on the SheTek Community Careers page. We post hot new tech opportunities around New Jersey, New York, and the rest of the United States every week. From highly skilled and paid roles to entry-level positions suited for those just getting started, we've got a position for everyone. Stop by SheTek Careers and find your next job today. Come join us and take advantage of our resources today. Thank you so much to everybody that joined today. Thanks so much for sticking with us this whole time. I really appreciate it. I love seeing all these familiar faces in the participants list. Thanks again to Dean Monica Adya of Rutgers School of Business Camden and to Chaya Pamula of SheTek and PamTen. Stay plugged into The Outlet. Join us in our community over at shetek.net for that follow-up conversation and follow us on your favorite social media channels. Thank you. Talk soon. Thanks again.
Thanks, Mon. Great talking to you.
Yep, same here.